have in attendance. I think we have everybody here today, and we want everybody here to be so we'll know what's being said and what's going on. Today we have Senator Floyd Nicholson, Mr. Arthur Gary, Senator Greg Embry, Ms. Leslie Price, Mr. Paul Somerville, Representative Michael Sattelli, and myself, Representative Dennis Moss, in attendance. And we have staff attorneys, Senate Staff Attorney Heather Anderson, and Roland Franklin from the House Judiciary Committee. So to start out with, I'd like for Ms. Anderson to read our duty here today is what we're here to do.
Good morning, everyone. And you have a copy of the statutes at each of your seats as well. But subsection A of 5-1-26 says that the Joint Legislative Committee on Municipal Incorporation is created to review the petition and documentation submitted by an area seeking municipal incorporation and to make a recommendation to the Secretary of State whether the area meets the minimum service standard incorporation requirements as provided in 5-1-30. And 5-1-30 gives a laundry list of requirements that an application for a petition or a petition for incorporation is supposed to meet. And some of those standards are you have to meet certain population density of at least 300 persons a square mile, according to the latest U.S. Census, that no part of the area is within 5 miles of the boundary of an active incorporated municipality, but there are certain exceptions to that, which, and then, let's see, that they filed the service feasibility study, that the area proposed is incorporated and contiguous means adjacent properties that share a continuous border, that they will provide directly or indirectly a substantially similar level of law enforcement services that the area had prior to seeking incorporation, that there is a petition that demonstrates that at least 3 of the following services will be provided either directly or by contract. And those services, and it has to be done within the 3rd fiscal year following the effective date of the incorporation. Fire protection at a minimum service level as required in regulations promulgated by the South Carolina Fire Marshal. Solid waste collection and disposal, water supply, water distribution, or both. Wastewater collection and treatment, stormwater collection and disposal, enforcement of building, housing, plumbing, and electrical codes, planning and zoning, recreational facilities and programs, street lighting.
Thank you. I wanted to re-clarify that. We read it at the first meeting, but there were some people in attendance in the audience and people on the committee that had other obligations or had to leave prior to the meeting. So does the committee have any comments before we get started? Okay, who do we have representing Indian Land today?
My name is Richard Dole, and I'm the president of Voters for a Town of Indian Land.
Hello, I am John Delphos, and I am one of your founding members of Voters for a Town of Indian Land.
Also in attendance today from Voters for a Town of Indian Land is Mr. Matt McCusker behind us. Myself and John Delphos will be presenting in front of the committee this morning. Okay.
If you would, you heard the guidelines. Do you know what the guidelines are and have a copy of them? We'd like for you to stick to that per se of the meeting for the sake of time.
Absolutely. We're very familiar with the guidelines, and Mr. Delphos's presentation will strictly adhere to that.
Thank you. You may go ahead.
Good morning, members of the Joint Legislative Committee on Municipal Incorporation. My name is Richard Dole, and I'm the president of Voters for a Town of Indian Land. Voters for a Town of Indian Land now consists of the following individuals, whom, including myself, are all citizen volunteers and have donated their time and money to this effort. Vice President and Treasurer John Delphos, Vice President of Public Affairs Mr. Matt McCusker, Vice President of Operations Dominic Musco, and Vice President of Communications Brent Kunze. Both are out of town on business. VTIL was officially organized in September of 2015 by 6 of the residents of the proposed town of Indian Land and is currently constituted only by residents of the proposed town of Indian Land. In just a few minutes, John Delfos will go through the presentation dealing how the incorporation package has met all the statutory requirements and rules to allow for the referendum vote, and by how meeting these requirements, almost 22,000 registered voters should be given the right to vote on whether or not we should be a town. But first and briefly, I would like to make a comment on behalf of the 4,000 plus registered voters whom have signed the petition asking you to allow them the right to vote on this matter. From the very start of this effort in February 2015 has been the goal of Voters for a Town of Indian Land to help the citizens of South Carolina residing in the proposed town of Indian Land obtain the right to vote on this most important matter. Having served this great nation for 10 years in the U.S. military and defended this most important right, I would implore each of you on this committee to keep this thought in mind as you review the incorporation package and hear our presentation, that by recommending this referendum, you will be giving the people the right to vote and not disenfranchising one of the largest non-incorporated communities in the state of South Carolina. As will be detailed by the presentation, the residents of the town of Indian Land are not asking for a handout from the state of South Carolina, nor from Lancaster County. We are simply asking you to give us the right to vote on this matter, whether we should form our local government to serve the residents of our area. By granting us this fundamental right to vote, you would be upholding the highest traditions of our great state and our country. We look forward to answering any questions you may have. And again, thank you for allowing us this hearing. Thank you, and now on to our presentation.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. As I said, my name is John Delfos. I am a retired executive from the Estee Lauder Companies and reside at Sun City, Carolina Lakes in Lancaster County in Indian Land. You may wonder why somebody who's retired gets involved in something like this. Well, from the day I moved into South Carolina, I was very much involved with county council, going to meetings and planning meetings, and also involved with Indian Land Action Council, also involved with RFATs from the standpoint of what we were doing on roads in our area, since our area is part of the high-density area. And over the time, I've got to admit that I got frustrated by what I thought was a lack of proper planning on things like roads and schools and a lot of other things, and a lack of actually follow-through by the county on those things that they actually had legislated on. I also heard outcry from the citizens who lived around me that said, when are we going to get the growth here under control? And there have been many efforts to incorporate Indian Land before, several. I was involved in one before this effort, and I felt that we finally had the right group of people to get together to actually make a meaningful effort to get something done that would be positive. This has been a long and arduous task. It's been 2 years. We formed about 2 years ago in September as a group, and it's taken us 2 years to get the necessary petition signatures and to meet with all the communities. We've had town hall meetings. We've met with the HOAs of all the communities we could and reached out to. We've met with organizations. I think the first organization was the Rotary Club. And we met with the Democratic groups, the Republican groups, actually with one of the first meetings with Van Wyck to talk to them about what this might mean for them. So we've taken a lot of time. We think we've done our due diligence, and the package is complete. Our understanding is the committee is responsible to ensure that we have met the statutes, and we believe we have. We believe that we've met those requirements and look forward to a favorable recommendation from the committee. Just before I go through the formal presentation on the slide, I'd like to give you an example. As we did the petitions and we got over 4,000 signatures, not only did it take a lot of work, but personally on my own part, I checked every single one of those signatures, went through voter registration records online to make sure that we had everybody certified so when we passed this thing in, it was going to get through, and it obviously did get through. We've got the petition signatures. But there were times during this process when it was frustrating, it was hard, and you thought, why am I doing this? And then you look at every one of those signatures that I saw, and every single one of those registrations, and I said, I can't let these folks down. They're looking for help here as a community, and I've got to see this through. So here we are today, and I want to go through the presentation. Basically, Ms. Anderson went through some of this already, but I'm going to go through it because I want to show how we've actually ticked off all the areas that are required. Okay, so as was said before, Section 5-126, Joint Legislative Committee for Municipal Incorporation was created with its members, terms, chairman, and committee staff. Paragraph or Section A, the Joint Legislative Committee on Municipal Incorporation is created to make a recommendation to the Secretary of State whether the area meets the minimum service standards incorporation requirements as provided in the Section 5-1-30. The prerequisites to issuance of corporate certificate to proposed municipality. Paragraph 1. A population density of at least 300 persons per square mile according to the latest official United States Census. And we've got well over that number. Paragraph 2. No part of the area is within 5 miles of the boundary of an active incorporated municipality except where provided in subsection B through E. And subsection B says when the population of the area seeking incorporation exceeds 7,000 persons, which we do, we're well over 20,000 now, then the provision of 5-mile limitation of this section does not apply. Section 3 has filed a service feasibility study that has been reviewed by the Joint Legislative Committee on Municipal Incorporation and approved by the Secretary of State. Section 4, and the area proposed to be incorporated is contiguous. Section 5, the area seeking to be incorporated has filed a proposal for providing either direct or indirectly a substantially similar level of law enforcement services to the area existing law enforcement coverage prior to seeking incorporation, which we have. Section 6, the area seeking to be incorporated has filed a proposal demonstrating that at least 3 of the following services, either directly or by contract, will be provided to the incorporated area no later than the first day of the 3rd fiscal year following the effective date of incorporation. And you see here a list of all the different potential services we could provide. We've checked off fire protection, enforcement of building, housing, plumbing, and electrical codes, planning and zoning, and recreational facilities and programs. So we're well over the statute's requirements. Now you got Article 2, 113-200, Municipal Incorporations. Provide to the South Carolina Secretary of State a certification by the Research and Statistical Services Division of the South Carolina Budget and Control Board that the area in the proposed municipality has a population density of at least 300 persons per square miles. Check that. Provide evidence that the served notice of the intent to incorporate by certified mail to the mayor, town manager, or similar official in any incorporated municipality within 10 miles, thank you, of the point of the proposed municipality, as well as South Carolina Municipal Association. Yeah, I got it. Sorry, I'm a little bit behind there. Section C, provide to the Secretary of State certification by a county planning or zoning office or the Research Statistical Services Division of the South Carolina Budget and Control Board regarding the total land area in square miles. Has been done. Section D, provide to the Secretary of State a certification by the Research and Statistical Services Division of the South Carolina Budget and Control Board or the county assessor or auditor of the current assessed value of the real and personal property within the proposed corporate limits, together with a calculation of the general obligation bonding capacity available without a referendum. South Carolina Code Section 10-130 provides that the Secretary of State must approve a service feasibility study for any proposed municipality. Pursuant to this statutory requirement, the incorporators of the proposed municipality must provide the following minimum information to the Secretary of State's office. Article 2, a map showing the proposed corporate limits, the total population within the proposed corporate limits, the total land area in square miles. Did I get it? Yes, I did. Square miles within the proposed corporate limit, a definite list of the proposed services to be provided by the proposed municipality, a detailed explanation of each service to be provided, a detailed description of the service, and a realistic estimate of the cost of such service contract. the current assessed value of the real and personal property and bonding capacity, a proposed operating budget for the first fiscal year, detailing the sources and amount of anticipated revenue to include the tax millage rate required to generate the required revenue and the anticipated revenue from property taxes. The expenditures will be detailed to include the normal line items of personal equipment, supplies, and other operating costs for each department or service. And lastly, 9 and 10, a proposed capital budget itemizing the property, equipment, rolling stock, infrastructure, and other items expected to be required within the first 2 years. And the applicant shall be required to use any forms promulgated by the Secretary of the State's office. And that concludes our presentation for today.
Thank you, sir. Does any of the committee have comments or questions? Call on Mr. Summerfield.
Somebody's got to go first, right? All right. Questions on the budget. I see your proposed budget for year one is about $7 million plus, shy of 8. Just by way of comparison, I looked at a couple other cities. I looked at Myrtle Beach and Aiken. Aiken has 31,000, I think, give or take, and their budget is about $30 million, which kind of raises a question in my mind about how could that be. Well, so I started looking into the particulars, and last time we met, we talked about roads and the fact that the county will not agree to maintain your roads. You all are familiar with the recent Attorney General's opinion that says that essentially that municipalities are responsible for roads within their jurisdiction. And you all didn't budget for roads, and I'm wondering, I don't know how many, you got a lot of rural roads in there that are, I don't know how many of them are state roads, how many are county roads, but I'm guessing state roads aside, that there's a lot of roads in there you all are going to have to maintain. And the same with, I don't know about bridges. I haven't looked at the map, see how many bridges. But anyway, there needs, in my opinion, on your budget, in order to meet the requirement, you're going to have some money in there for road maintenance and bridges. And of course, if you start building out, then you're going to have new roads, and the county's not going to take them, and the state's not going to take them, so that means they're going to be yours. So that's one item on the budget that troubles me. The other one is I had to do a little research on this, but there were some comments about what DHEC requires and DHEC doesn't require for stormwater compliance. And so I wondered if any part of Lancaster County fell under the MS4 requirements, and I did some checking. Well, it turns out everything above Highway 5 is going to be mandated or has been mandated by DHEC for MS4 compliance, and that's expensive. I think the Lancaster County implemented, it'll show up, I think, on your next tax bill. I don't think it's been on your previous tax bill. It'll show up your next tax bill. A stormwater fee of $60 per, I think it's per, what is it, per household or per whatever it is. I've forgotten exactly how it broke, but anyway, $60. I can tell you in Beaufort County, that's low. Ours, our county is, I think, 87, and then the municipalities are running over 100, up between 100 and 150. So I didn't see any budgeted item in there for stormwater, and I'm not 100% sure of anything, but I'm 99% sure DHEC isn't going to let you off the hook just because you incorporate. So they're going to require some stormwater money from you all, and it's going to be significant. And I think that needs to be in your budget. A couple of other things trouble me, which are not on the checklist, but I'll run down them real quickly. One is the agricultural exemption for tort liability for the farmers. I mean, that's a problem. I think I have enough anecdotal evidence to make me think that some of those farmers, if not most of them, are concerned about losing that exemption, and also about the livestock issue within a municipality. I don't know too many municipalities in South Carolina that allow livestock, and I don't know any that allow firearms, discharge of firearms. So I don't know how you're going to handle that, but I think that's something that needs to be resolved between you all and the agricultural folks. And then you got, well, I'll get to it in a minute. Somebody mentioned last time that property taxes or ad valorem taxes can only go up by increase in the cost of living. That is not correct. As you know, it goes up by cost of living plus the population increase. So that's just a clarification of something that was said last time. Then there's the standard question, which the gentleman on my right is going to ask you about enhanced services, so I won't get into that. I understand you have 10 square miles. There are 10 square miles, more or less, that have filed letters of intent to be annexed into Van Wyck. And I understand the Van Wyck's elections are not going to be till November the 12th, so it's going to be a problem. But I mean, that kind of dovetails back into the Attorney General's opinion on I guess it was on James Island, that petition signatures, the population has to be what it is on the petition signatures, and I think that might change. So that concerns me. There was some talk about local option sales tax. I don't even want to get into that, but I know, but I'm not sure how that affects anything. And then, of course, we didn't talk about last time, if you are going to have an agreement with the Highway Patrol, it's not mandated, but, you know, you're going to lose a lot of coverage if you don't have an agreement with the Highway Patrol. So I don't know where you all are going to go on that. Somebody mentioned, did I understand you to say that they wanted to pay the zoning board, have a paid zoning board of appeals? I think that's legal under the state statutes, but I don't think there's anything prohibiting. It's interesting. I'd like to hear some discussion on that, if that is something you all want to do. And then, of course, you got the whole the issue of District 1 and District 7. I mean, District 7, I guess, is the rural areas, 46 square miles, and District 1 is the urban areas is 10 square miles, and it looks like the tail's wagging the dog. And I'm just wondering, even if you get down into District 1 with the 46 square miles, or those folks are diluted. There aren't a lot of them, and I'm wondering if they're getting steamrolled by the ones in District 7. That's the question that I have. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, I guess you'd like a response to that. All right. Okay. Now, first of all, let me tell you, I'm trying to write down everything you put on the table here. As far as stormwater is concerned, if you went through our list and the checklist, we did not say we were taking on stormwater collection or disposal or anything like that. Currently, the county is dealing with that. As you said, they're going to be levying a $60 per property tax on that. And I assume that and they're talking about putting an office actually up in Indian Land to manage that. And I expect the county to manage that for us.
But I don't mean to interrupt you, but how do you know that the county's going to do that? Because I don't know the county's going to do that. I mean, in Beaufort County, and that's the only frame of reference I have, the municipalities have their own stormwater programs. They have different millages, or I'm sorry, different fees, and they operate independently from the county. The county does unincorporated, but they don't do incorporated. So I'm going to challenge you on that. I'd like to see something in writing from the county that says they're going to do that, because I doubt that very seriously.
Well, I would think, and I don't know the law, I'm not a lawyer, but I would think based on federal requirements that they would have to cover that for the county. But I hear what you're saying. As far as the roads are concerned, we believe that the opinion is an opinion. We think that it would be very difficult with 275 some odd municipalities to put that requirement for roads on every single one of the municipalities within the state of South Carolina. But if it does happen, we have actually Jerry Holtz here with us, who put together a lot of the budget assumptions and that we put into our package. And we talked this morning, and basically if we take the amount that the county spends today on roads and look at the area that we cover, which is about 10% of the total county, we figure we would need about $300,000 to do the same thing as the county does right now. And we definitely have money as far as our contingency budget to cover that should that happen.
Let me ask you a question. Did you all ask the county, Lancaster County, if they would agree in writing to continue to maintain the roads in what may become Indian Land?
I don't think we had to, but yes, I think we did, Jerry, didn't we?
And what did they say?
We did not.
We did not. Okay.
An affirmation that they would maintain the road.
I'm sorry. Say it again.
We did not get an affirmation from the county that they would maintain the road.
Right. Which means you
this
asked
is
them and they didn't say yes, or they said no.
They did not say yes or no.
Okay. All right.
We don't have any on that. Yeah.
I mean, pardon me.
My question was, did you approach the county and ask them if they would affirm or give you an affirmation they would maintain the roads. I think you did, and I think they refused to. Am I wrong about that?
I don't think we asked the question. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong, because I don't think we thought that was going to be one of our responsibilities or something we'd accept.
We didn't ask them based on hypothetical outcomes of legal cases.
Well, the Attorney General's opinion is floating around. It's new,
Yes.
as you all know, and I can tell you that I haven't talked to all the counties, but the ones I've talked to, including my own, we're in negotiations with the municipalities to transition that responsibility to the municipalities. So just FYI.
I guess when that comes, we'll deal with it. Okay. As far as agricultural exemptions are concerned, we actually had, and I think it's a letter in our package to Van Wyck, before they were approved as a town, and we are ready to set up overlay districts within Indian land to give exemptions, to continue the agricultural exemptions, and also any issues they have with, what they can and can't do. So we think we have a way by creating an overlay district for rural farm areas to protect their interests going forward. Let's see. Highway something agreement. Agreement with the State Highway Patrol. We've not gone after that. As far as the Zoning Board of Appeals, yes, we do plan on having a Zoning Board of Appeals, and we feel that's part of our total planning for the town of Indian Land. It's one thing to have statutes which indicate, what can and can't be done and have a zoning plan, but it's another thing to enforce that and make sure that it's taken care of. We don't see the county doing that properly right now. We definitely would want to do that, and that's in the budget. Is there something else that you were looking for an answer on?
Well, yeah, I can just kind of review them real quickly. That the 10 square miles that I understand, I don't have anything to prove this, but I understand there's approximately 10 square miles of agricultural land that is petitioning or in the process of petitioning or has petitioned to annex into Van Wyck to prevent being annexed into what may become Indian land. And that would significantly alter the boundaries and also the square miles in the area that you're seeking to include in Indian land. And I'm saying that butts up, in my mind, that butts up against the AG's opinion that says that when people sign the petition, they have to know what is included and what is not, and I'm saying that could change significantly, arguably.
I don't know about the 10 acres. I do know that the section of the square miles. I do know that the area that have been included in our package prior to taking Van Wyck out of it now because they're a town, and of course they're only about 1 square mile, I think, but it was 6.4 square miles, and as far as the petition is concerned, we've got, and as I said before, I've gone through every single name on the petitions, and there are only 2 people from the Van Wyck voting district who actually signed the petition, so we don't think that we're disappointing too many people there.
Just one last question. It's my understanding that the town of Lancaster maintains their own roads. Is that accurate?
I do not know that.
Thank you. I yield.
Chair recognizes Mr. Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To reiterate from the last meeting, I think this has been going on a great period of time for Incorporation. I've read a lot. I feel like I'm a part of the community in some respect for all I've read. But there's also some major deficits in all this material that you've given us, and I appreciate that. One of the major deficits is that I see that I got all this information from Lancaster County, and it really brings up red flags. For what you're planning on doing, I don't think you got the millage or the assessed value to be able to do it. I would like to say, to go back and start over a little bit from the fact that what services are you going to provide these citizens that are so many in number, 10% of the population, 10% of the area, however you want to say. What are you going to provide that's not already there? That's one major question. It's nuts and bolts, but I don't know what you're going to do. I don't know what you're striving for. Why do you want to incorporate? What is it that you're not getting that you have the ability to get right now? You want to list them, or you want to answer individually?
Well, I mean,
Richard, how would you like to go? John?
It's John. Well, I'd like to say something up front is Van Wyck was in the same, and this committee approved them. So what is it they were doing? We're actually going to offer services to the community. We have a revenue stream. We are growing at a rate of 10% per annum. We have people that are in need of the services the county cannot or will not provide. And it's simple that we have this reason we have people signing these petitions because the services are not there. We have no representation in their local transportation councils. We don't, with Charlotte, we can't even come into play with them because there's nobody there to represent us. They've asked an open council, the Lancaster County Council, why aren't you at these meetings? They don't have any response. So we've met the requirements. We've gone through this, and we'd like to move forward with it. Every other 273 other municipalities in the state have been given this right. Why shouldn't we be allowed to that?
let me answer the question specifically.
Okay.
That's what I like to do.
Thank you.
The Indian land area will be serviced 100 times better by a local government with local representation, if only to control the way the area is expanding and growing. And I'm not saying stop growth. I'm talking about controlling the way it's growing, okay? We've got statutes that have been passed over the last few years by the county council for overlay districts for 521, which talk about setbacks, talk about landscaping, talk about how the buildings are supposed to be done. And basically, they don't come up there and make sure that they're following the statutes. And every time I got to call them up, and the zoning board or somebody, and I say, look, why aren't they building the sign the way they're supposed to? Well, we don't have time to come up there. Or, oh, that's okay. We don't worry about that. But we've got one development after another after another. We've got county councilmen, which I've argued at the ILAC meetings. I said, wait a minute. I said, you just approved 20,000 new residents through the homes and the developments you developed here. And I said, you haven't spoken to the board of the school board one iota. There's not one plan in there to expand the schools. And I said, can't you hold up all these approvals until at least you have a plan put forward to manage the school and the growth in the schools? And the answer I got back was, well, that would take a whole survey. We got to put a study together. We got to do this. I said, wait a minute, 20,000 new homes? You're going to have at least 5,000 more kids. There's not one desk there to put a kid at this point. I said, you've got a plan. You've got to think about what you're doing. How about the roads? You got 521 with every development, every shopping center is getting more and more crowded, and they're not doing anything to control that. There was opportunities at RFATs to actually get matching dollars from the federal government in order to improve an intersection that we've got right in the middle of town. And they never took advantage of it. I mean, if we do, and we've got dollars in there to expand police, fire, and everything, as long as the county does their job and maintains what we're paying them now to help us do that. But if we do nothing more than just give the residents the ability to control the way the area is growing and the way the area looks aesthetically, we have done a ton. So I hope that answers the question.
I think what you're saying that you plan to be more technically oriented to the needs of that area to develop in expanding the requirements to meet development.
We will put whatever requirements are required to do it correctly. Let's put it that way. That would be our goal. I had a thought and I lost it. Sorry.
Well, that's all right. Let me. So that's the first clue that I've gotten that you want to improve something after all the reading material you've got here. That you want to sit there and control some of the development that's going on in the land in the proposed incorporated Indian land. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I know what I was going to say now. I forgot, but the county doesn't even have a road plan. I just went through a new UDO, Unified Development Ordinance.
I understand that.
Okay. And I said, well, you don't even have a road plan. I mean, you talk about Dave Lyle Extension. They haven't made sure that land is set aside in case they want to put a road through there. They don't have any road to say, okay, they talk about wanting bypasses around 521 to move traffic away and one thing or another. They don't have a road plan. The first thing I do is put a road plan together to make sure that as we expand and approve new developments, that we have a way of moving traffic and moving people around. there are, with his new UDO, I mean, it was the perfect example. The county right now has a very hard time saying no to a rezoning because they've done it for everybody else. So they're afraid of lawsuits. Every time they say, we're not going to do that, we shouldn't do that, and their planning boards tell them not to do it, they agree to it anyway. And quite honestly, when we had the new UDO, it was the opportunity to say, okay, we're drawing a line, this is what the zoning is, and we're going to keep it that way. We've done a lot of research for 2 years, now we're going to go with it. Within weeks, they had a developer come in and say, we want to expand the land, that change the zoning behind the high school to build, 3 or 4 times as many homes as what's allowed right now. And they're going ahead and doing it anyway. I mean, to me, it just doesn't make sense. And I just put it to you folks that I've been frustrated by this for 7 years now. And I really believe that the local folks who live in the district and area of Indian land will have a better ability to understand their issues and the time and the resources and the passion to do it right, or do it better anyway.
Okay. If I could continue talking, Chairman Moss, if I could ask more questions. If you have a question. Oh, I got several.
He's never lacking.
Let me, that's why I was asking the chair if I could proceed. Okay. So what you want is more control of your development.
That's correct.
In your proposed incorporated area.
That's correct.
As large as it is and as large as the population is, you want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you think these people that sign these petitions and the people in that area understand that?
I hope so, because we've gone out and talked to them all.
Right. You hope they do understand?
Yes.
Okay. Do they understand that you're going to have to come up with a form of government?
Yes.
Do you understand how that?
I understand. We've explained it to
Okay. You understand that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you understand what the millage rate's going to have to be to cover all these necessities that you're wanting?
It's in our budget. It's in our budget.
Well,
I know you don't think that it covers it, but
no, I honestly don't. I mean, I'm looking at a letter here on March the 7th of this year, and your total assessed value is $182 million. $182 million. That's all. Do you realize how much that lack that is to be able to do it? I would suggest that a form of government, I have no idea what you're going to come up with or whatever you've talked about. But I will assure you without a shadow of a doubt, I'm sitting here, that your millage rate that you propose in your budget is so undervalued. I don't think the citizens understand that you're going to have to shoot those mills up at least 80 mills on top of what you got right now at a bare minimum. At a bare minimum. And I'm looking at more like 110 is what you're going to have to pick those mills up to. And I'm just looking at your budget and what a mill generates and what your total assessed value is. Your market value. Look at that. Of course, I'll admit that you're growing, and then you want to kind of slow it down and materialize that. But those are the things that extremely, extremely stress me out when you got a population that you want, the area that you want in acreage and density, and these basic questions of a new government that you want to start up there that the people may or may not know what they're voting for, may or may not understand what the millage rate's going to be to cover all this, and may or may not understand what additional services you're going to be able to get.
Sir, can you repeat that number? Because that's not the number I think.
I'm looking at, I got it from your assessor's office, Brad Carnes, and
That's all right.
I'm looking at the assessed value. I'm not that concerned about the market value. I am concerned about your assessed value because that's the millage you're going to be able to generate.
$1 million on assessed value, right? Okay, I got it.
And what you say may be the case, Mr. Gary.
Well, I mean, it's not maybe.
There's 275 other municipalities in the state. Are they all?
No, they're not asking for it. In all due respect, you're the one asking to be incorporated.
We are asking the citizens to give them the right to vote for the citizens to determine whether they want to be that way. We're not asking for a hypothetical possibility. We want to determine our own future. That's what we're asking, the right to vote. And the citizens are aware. We've published these documents. They've been on the websites. We've gave town halls, and they're aware. You know what they say overwhelmingly? We'd like the right to vote on this.
Oh, yeah. I would think that they would look at the service and how much it's going to cost them, and yeah, they would like to vote, but I don't think they understand how much it's going to cost them. I just wanted to bring those issues out. Those are the highlights. I know there's other people on this committee, and I know the chairman's quite capable, and the members of this committee are quite capable of asking you other more pointed questions, but those are the things that bother me greatly when you got people and the density that you have and the land mass that you have. And I don't think those are questions that should be overlooked with today's development of economic development and cost of running government. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. Now we'll call on Senator Nicholson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you all for coming down today and sharing with us and everything. First question has to do with law enforcement. I know you mentioned about, contacting Highway Patrol, but, they just do traffic. We're talking about safety, safety in the community. So if you're not going to set up a police force right away, I guess you're going to have to contract with the county.
That's correct.
For service. Have you already discussed that issue with them?
Yeah, it's part of, we've got a commitment from Sheriff Fail to continue the service he currently does for the county.
Okay. So what level is that now? How do they do it?
Same level that they got. And I can't tell you the number of officers and everything they got, but actually Sheriff Fail had proposed to the town of Indian, or the area of Indian Land, to increase that, and he put a budget together in order to do that and wanted to assess on a local assessment, and the folks basically didn't want to accept the extra money. It's like the extra $60, they want another $75 per household. But we've got in our budget the money to do that for them. So we think we're not only going to be able to continue the police, we know we're going to be able to continue at the current level of enforcement. Well, we believe we're going to be able to increase that and give Sheriff Fell what he needs.
Okay. The second item has to do with, the services provided. I know you list 3 that you're going to provide. First, what are your plans on providing the additional services needed in the future?
I think that's been thought through, and we'd some of them we may or may not want to take on, but that's for be reserved for the future town council. So we were looking at the minimum services, or the services we need that we saw the most immediate impact on our area. We proposed those, and we're going to move forward from there. As far as a resident, and I live there, I would like to take over a lot more of those services, because once again, we feel like we can better manage this area. We live there, we know what we need, and we're just asking for the opportunity. It's just not lightly that we went down this road for this mission, and I understand and I appreciate you hearing us on this, but the people of the area would like to at least have this opportunity to take these matters and address them locally. So that's where we are.
Sir, were you asking about additional responsibilities to the ones we've checked off?
Yeah, you listed 3 that you'll provide the first day.
Actually 4 of them.
Additional services.
Right.
What are your plans in the future? Because I can say, if you're not going to provide them, you're going to rely upon the county.
That's right.
And you mentioned now that you don't have a good relationship with the county council and everything, and I think that's something you need to establish. Because if you're going to be asking them to provide services, you need a relationship. You need communication and everything.
I agree with you 100%.
So, you need to develop some type of relationship with council if you're going to be asking those things.
Well, you have to be doing that anyway. I mean, they're collecting taxes from all of our citizens, and we have to have that relationship.
Yes, so, you need to build on that.
We'll see if we can do it. They don't have a very good relationship with the Board of Education. So
And that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
When you think about, you talk about the schools and everything,
Yeah.
I think you have, Board of Education in Lancaster County.
Yeah.
I think they're the ones to request what's needed as far as the educational needs of the county, and they're the ones to go to county council and request those certain things.
Yeah.
So it's not really just the county, it's the Board of Education, what they foresee the needs of the county are, and they make the recommendations and go forward.
Right.
Not just point at the county.
Yeah.
You have those elected people on the Board of Education. They have certain things they have to do and everything. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing is, we ask these questions because we don't want it to be a failure.
Yeah.
We don't want it to set up and come back in a year to, we cannot do it, we're bankrupt, and we got to go under. That's the whole thing. We're looking at the total picture of what's best, for Lancaster County.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We had, I've got to say that the prior efforts to incorporate had almost no money in the budget at all, and we thought we came up with a pretty generous budget, so, okay.
Chair, call on Ms. Price at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank all of you all for taking the time to come out and exercise your right of making a request, and your request is to be incorporated. I've served on Aiken City Council for 30 years and currently still serving. And the biggest concern that I have from voters in our town deals with taxes and fees. Who's paying for it? Who's paying for the services? I respect your wish and your right to want to be incorporated. What I really want to be a bit more convinced about is the taxes and fees that you can expect to come. Aiken has a population of about a little over 30,000 folks. We have a budget of a little over 50 million. We have the local option sales tax. That sales tax has raised, with the county involved as well, about $50 million. So we have managed to provide a lot of our services through the local option sales tax added to our budget. We've had a millage rate of over 100 mills. That millage rate now is 62 mills. So as services began to improve, as we levied more fees, and you can expect that, stormwater fees, water fees, garbage fees, those increases will come if you want the infrastructure intact for your community. So all I want to be convinced of as citizens is that you know what is to come. I get a lot of complaints about fees and taxes being levied on them. Naturally, we have a low millage rate, but frankly, what you hear from citizens is when you place a fee on me, it is tax. It is a tax, but that is a targeted fee for the services that you're being provided. It's stormwater fees, it's water and sewer, you name it. So I just want to make you aware of what is coming. We have county roads in our jurisdiction, state roads, and city roads. We have found that we have, even though based on the population of our folks and how our town is laid out, you can have a person living in the city right across from a county person, but that road is still there. So they're expecting those potholes to be corrected. So frankly, we just implemented a roads program this year for our city after more than 150 plus years of being in existence. So it is the fees that you can expect that I want you, if the population of 4,000 that has signed this petition, they need to know that more fees, more taxes is coming, and they're going to be a large bearer of those fees and taxes. Not trying to scare you, but that's fact. That's life. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just a point of fact, I appreciate your comments. The county is starting to levy those fees, as a matter of fact, so we are aware. And the roughly 40,000 residents that will be in this community are aware of this, because we're the ones being called on to fund the entire burden. These areas above Highway 5 are specifically being targeted for the new fees. The rest of the county is not paying any of this, yet they're deriving money from our local sales office tax, which we have no problem with. We enjoy the relationship with the people in the rest of the county. We're not at odds with them. We simply want to take control of our area. We're generating these extra requirements on the county, and we understand their capacity to work with us, and we will work with them on those. But yet we are north of Highway 5, as Mr. Somerville has pointed out. That's where we're looking at. We're paying those fees already, and the more and more are going to be generated, yet they're not directly used in our area appropriately. So local citizens would like the opportunity to become more involved in our own destiny. Thank you.
Well, the relationship issue does not give me a lot of heartburn. It depends on who's leading you. Leadership can determine harmony.
Absolutely.
And it may be an issue right now, but depending on who's leading, if you become incorporated, how you build that relationship, all that's a factor, and that can be improved if it's not improved already.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair, call Senator Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to apologize to you and the other members of the committee and the members in the audience of the committee that are seeking this incorporation. I couldn't attend the last meeting. As you may or may not know, my second grandson was suddenly 3 weeks early being born. As I was on my way to walking over here, my phone, I got a message on my phone that said, "We're having a baby right now. Get home immediately." And that was the end of that meeting for me. So I'm catching up a little bit, so I apologize to both to the committee and to the audience. I'm having to play a little bit of catch up, but I do have a couple of questions. First, this is more of a question of curiosity. I've just never heard of this, and to kind of piggybacking on Senator Nicholson's question, has there been some discussion with the Highway Patrol about contracting for their services, or was that just some possibility was sort of thrown out there on the table at some point by somebody, or how did that get in the discussion?
I have not had any discussion with the Highway Patrol. We've had discussion with the Lancaster County Sheriff to maintain the level of service and also increase those services, because in the budget we have an additional $1 million more deputies. There's a woefully inadequate amount of law enforcement in the area based on SLED requirements, and we're in need, and we just can't finance it. So we got an agreement with the Lancaster County Sheriff's Department, right?
I guess we didn't understand that we would need to get an agreement with the state police, since they're state police.
Let me help you on this one, because this is something I know a little bit about. They're not going to Highway Patrol is not going to contract with you for services.
Right.
They're going to they're going to provide. They're going to work traffic like they've always worked traffic in South Carolina. Whether they do that in municipalities, they do that in the county. They don't really pay attention to those lines quite so much. There are city governments that have police departments, and counties for that matter, that have sheriff's offices that do work traffic in addition to the Highway Patrol. But some cities don't. Or some areas don't. They just leave it to the Highway Patrol. So that's something you're not going to need to. You can work on some other stuff.
Thank you.
You got a long list. You can work on those.
I'll have to work on.
I did note that I thought it was about $1.2 million that you're looking to, that you budgeted for augmented law enforcement services with the county sheriff's office. Is that my understanding?
That's correct.
And how have you formulated that? How did you come up with that number, if you will?
The Lancaster County Sheriff wanted to increase the services to meet the requirements, and he did the whole budget work for us. And so we just took his budget.
He just said I can add some deputies and.
Yeah, he came to the citizens and told us we needed to do this, and he passed the budget to us, so we simply utilized what he'd already done.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate at some point forming your own local police department?
That's an interesting question. Right now we wanted to contract with the sheriff just to get this municipality up and running, but in my mind, eventually we could see that formation occur.
Well, and if you want greater services, you're going to, I agree with you. It makes sense to me, and as I'm sort of listening to y'all, I guess and some of these budget concerns that others have, I tend to start to have as well, because if that's coming down the road, then there's going to be a substantial increase in your budget coming down the road, which is fine. That's anticipated. But when you say the budget's $7 million? Is it about
7.7 million?
7.7 million starting out. I worry a little bit that you might be selling it. You're selling it at 7, but it's going to 21 in 5 years. And
let me ask you, because our understanding is by state law we can't increase it that much. It's basically based on inflation and population growth. So I don't see how we'd be able to do that.
No, I think I agree with you. I think you're going to have you're going to have a hard time doing it, and that's one of the things I think we're concerned about. What you're hearing from us is not because we don't want you to be a town. That's not our job. That's the voters' job to decide whether you become a town. Correct. But it's our job to be a gatekeeper to make sure that your plan is sound, so you don't go down this path and then 6 years from now you're back looking at state government and saying, help us, you got to fix this mess we made because we didn't do our jobs. Because I didn't do my job up here, we didn't do our jobs. That's sort of, we gave you what you wanted, okay, and now you caught it, you dog that caught the car. So that's kind of the goal here. It's not to shut you down. It's to try to figure out how to get you in the best place to be successful. And I think that's really where everybody is coming from. And that gets me where I need to be with law enforcement. it sounds like to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, that it sounds like the only additional service that you are providing is land use planning.
We're also doing a recreational
Okay.
services, but right now they're just functionally none. I live in the area that's being incorporated. I don't even have a park within 5 miles of even open space. All the open space has been just basically either rezoned or removed from use for any residential. We have thousands of children at the recreational facilities. As a matter of fact, the county was removing our rec center
Right.
and taking it down that was close to us to move it somewhere else to sell the property along 521 because it was worth so much. It's their own property. So we're asking for those types. I have grandchildren. A lot of us have children. We want to put those types of things in place, and the citizens are clamoring for it. Our elementary schools grew by 10% from last year. 10% growth in elementary school year on year.
I got it.
So we want to put these recreational facilities in place. We also want to plan to not overcrowd the schools. So that's what one of the other services we want to do. And we thoughtfully chose these because we understand a startup. As a businessman, I understand a startup. We have to start at some point and move forward. And to your concerns of what will happen 6 or 7 years from now, those things will be thought and move forward. The group of individuals that we know and the people in the community will thoughtfully look at the future and plan for it because it's our place to live. It's where we live and we reside. And we don't want to see it degraded because people, in our opinion, that have less communication, they don't come through there very often, don't understand our needs. And it's difficult. It's different. It really is. That's why you're looking above Highway 5. It's completely different. We're still citizens of the same great state, but we have different requirements than we do south and more rural areas of Lancaster County. And it's hard for those people to understand us. And we just want to take advantage of our own capacity for self-government.
Okay, so land use planning and recreation are the two primary. Is that, I mean, tell me.
I mean, other than that, we just talked about additional, hopefully, police service.
Right, a little bit, and augment that.
And we have additional dollars for the fire as well, because we've got some big shopping centers coming in, which we haven't had. And the county is, they're committed, as they have in the past, to provide equipment and one thing or another, but they need a new high ladder, and they need, a big movie theater coming in. So, and we actually sat down with each one of the fire chiefs in each one of the departments, and they said, look, what we need is this. And we said, well, we can't give you this, but we can maybe improve it by going to this. So we think we're going to be able to give them something more than what they have today.
Gotcha. Now, I want to take you back to this roads issue because the General Assembly's been very, very involved in this debate I've been here 5 years, so for 5 years at least, and even longer. The state's obviously trying to get rid of their road system, and if y'all want to take it, we'll make a deal right now. But that's, understanding I understand, so I've learned, I didn't know it before, but I've learned a lot about how costly it is, how far behind we are, and the fact that if you incorporate, and you're a pretty big area, unlike Van Wyck and some other things, we've looked at some other towns over the years that were smaller geographically, so it's just a different issue, but you're pretty big, and a lot of county roads in there. The county is not going to, once you become a city, I can tell you, the county, they don't want to go in there anyway. Now they're really not going to go in there. So you're going to be faced with, I'm just saying this because it's the truth, you're going to be faced with maintaining those roads. And when you say, well, we can spend $300,000 and maintain the roads, based on that formula, that's going to be enough. Yeah. There's no way on God's green earth that's going to happen. Because number one, your folks are mad. The reason you're here in the first place is because you can't get decent roads. You're mad about the roads, among other things. So, which is fair. You want to get control of your road system. I'm really concerned that you've not budgeted, have given this some thought, because that sort of data is not that difficult to obtain from the DOT. And in the end, the good thing about roads that makes it easy is it's just engineering and money. Really, it's easy.
That last part's kind of hard.
Well, but it's just engineering and money. It's not, schools, you're dealing with human beings. Criminal justice, you're dealing with human beings. They get to be very complicated. Engineering and money, not so complicated. It's not complicated, it's just hard to do. So, I really would, I can tell you for one, I would feel much more comfortable with an allocation, even though, the statute doesn't say in here, it say you got to get your budget right. It doesn't say you have to provide for roads as one of the criteria, but it does say you need to get your budget right. I would feel much more comfortable if you can assess how many miles of road you got that you're going to be stuck with, what the condition of those roads are, what your paving schedule is going to need to be. It's not as, it's a DOT's doing this constantly. They've got these formulas for this stuff all the time. But, that's something that, I think is going to be, that's going to come to bite you a lot quicker than you think. And that's when, here's what's going to go. Y'all are going to be looking to state to saying we need some money for, through our CTC funds or something else to pay for these road improvements or these not even improvements. We're not even talking about improvements, but you're going to be looking at a ton of road improvements because of tremendous growth you have, which is terrific that you got the growth, but I'm living this in my own county, and I live in North Myrtle Beach, Horry County, and we are very similar in many respects to the growing pains that you're going through. So I guess I'm living you through, your situation vicariously through. I'm trying to steal from anybody to get these road things done locally because they're so challenging and so expensive. So
let me put something forward. A couple of things. The $300,000 was not something we were considering would take care of the roads because we know it's not going to do the job. I've been to a lot of road meetings as well, and I think that that's just a portion of the budget from the county that the county spends on roads. So there, that it's not getting taken care of properly. But we've got $1 million in our contingency, which we could put towards roads if it comes to that. The other thing the county has done is they just passed an ordinance that said they will not take on any new roads and any new developments. So we would continue that and say, you want to make a new development, you're responsible for the road. So we're trying not to take on any more than we would have today.
To your point, and I guess I just want to agree with you. I think you're absolutely right. I don't think you're going to be taking on any more. Not many. You'll be taking on some because there'll be some that you'll just have to build inevitably as time goes by. But in new developments, that's not going to cost you. But those developments are going to put pressure on the ones that are your responsibility, and that you're going to have to pay for. And I can't, with the growth you guys are having, I just can't see that number ain't going to get smaller. It's just going to get a lot bigger.
Right now, the county, as you see, is woefully underfunding them as it is. So we believe that we could actually increase this and make things a little bit better for the citizens of the area. And that's, of course, the idea that you've presented to us. And I appreciate your input. And we feel like with the revenues being generated as we expand from the hospitality tax that's been put in place and things like that, that we can use those types of funds, not necessarily that one, but also the revenue offsets to make the roads much more, to make them better. How are we going to do that? So safer is a big one too. We actually do have, that's an interesting thing you brought up. We do have a serious problem with that right now. And a lot of that's, I think, just because we haven't had a good representation with DOT. Somebody to focal point on some of our roads for EMS to pass has been a problem.
Yeah, I can mention RFATs, which I sit in the committees there, and quite honestly, those towns of Rock Hill and Fort Mill, which have mayors sitting at the table, get a lot more action. We have one project on their list right now, and it's like $800,000 for a major intersection. It's not going to even buy the right of way. So we need better representation there as well. So.
Thank you, Senator. We have another question from Senator Nelson.
Yeah.
Or comment?
Just a quick question. I know you mentioned about hospitality tax. You know how those funds can be used?
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Not for roads at all.
No, not for roads.
It can be used for law enforcement, fire protection, which offsets
recreation.
Another one. So
tourism.
Yes, but
tourism. Majority, a small portion going to the general budget, but it has to promote tourism in the area. Mm-hmm. So those other things, you cannot use it.
It does also allow for the opportunity to use it for policing and fire protection because tourism requires those things. So.
But if you're not going to start a police force, how can you use it?
Chair recognizes Ms. Price.
I just want to add to Senator Nicholson's comment. The hospitality tax we just passed about a year ago, we've generated over $3 million in a year based on tourism.
Yep.
Chair recognizes Representative Mike Satilli for a comment or question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here this morning. My concern, and I just got a couple of quick comments, no questions, but as a former mayor of a city, I know what it's cost to run the city, but I also know that you need to control your own destiny. You know, you mentioned that. Mm-hmm. And you can control the cost of just how much you're going to spend in your city and what it's going to cost you through controlling your own destiny. You can decide what you want, what you don't want in most cases. And, you know, y'all have come before us. You've met all the requirements, checked all the boxes, and I just think that if a community wants to incorporate, we need to at least work with them, and which I think this committee's doing. And I hope that the voters favor it for y'all when the time comes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Staley. Representative Mr. Gary, you have a comment or question?
Yeah, just real quick. I want y'all to understand what Ms. Price mentioned in her first statement about the cost of running government and added. I want to make sure that you understand when Lancaster County puts a fee or a tax on the county, you're still in the county. You know, you're going to have to pay that fee. What you're asking for is more services than what they, and it's going to cost you more. So those fees that you're asking for Indian land, if you're incorporated and you form a government and get your millage right, that's going to be on top of what the Lancaster County is doing. I just want to make sure, you know, because that
comes up in every meeting. Yeah. Okay.
Does any other committee members have any comments or questions?
I think you got one over there.
Mr. Summerfield?
Yeah. You mean local option sales tax? It certainly is, yeah. Yeah. They've got a 2% tax, which I thought was the local option sales. I think they've got a 1% for roads and other projects.
Yes, they
accommodation tax.
The hospitality tax is
hospitality tax. Yeah.
Yes.
What's an accommodation? Explain it to us, please. Okay.
Well, we have one current hotel under construction, so we wouldn't have had that yet. Yes, we do have the hospitality tax in place, and since the first hotel is being built, a Marriott Residence Inn, no, well, we haven't had a hotel to have an accommodations tax yet. They've all been in Charlotte, so there will be one if that's the case.
What we used as the starting point was that a couple of years ago when the county...
Would you please come up to the microphone so we'll have this recorded and introduce yourself and tell us your name?
You worked with us at the beginning of the incorporation process, and we all worked together to derive.
Okay. Would you please say your name and make your answer the question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jerry Holt. I have previously been part of the group, and I did most of the work on putting together the budget. With the local option sales tax, we followed the algorithm on the way that the money is divvied up. We started by using the amount of money that the county used as their premise when they implemented the 1% capital projects tax. And the county's assumption was that that 1% was going to generate $8.5 million. So we started with the $8.5 million and just followed that through on using the formula to split it with the other municipalities and with the county. And I could take you through the arithmetic if you would want that. Just as the other comments on the budget, if I may, Mr. Chairman, just a brief comment regarding the budget. So much has been made of the fact that, or the impression that this is not a realistic budget, because when I compare it to other cities throughout the state, other cities anywhere, their budget numbers are so much larger, so yours obviously cannot be right. Well, we started this project with a set of assumptions, and primarily what we wanted to do was to get local control over planning and zoning, but we realized that there were other functions that, by necessity, should come along with a municipality. But we started, and we built a granular budget by saying, here is the head count that we need for each of these departments that support the premise that we had on building a municipal government and the services the municipality would provide. So we built it from the ground up. It was truly a zero-based budget, very, very granular. And the answer was what you see. So we didn't say, well, let's start looking at what Fort Mill has or Rock Hill has or any Aiken or any of the other cities, and let's kind of see how we can spend that money. So we do have a risk. If this is approved and people start coming to city council meetings and start demanding more services, we don't have the money there for that. But we recognize with the geographic area that we do cover that we have a large proportion that is agricultural and will probably remain agricultural until those people decide to sell their lands to developers. And one of the reasons that we wanted to do this was to make sure that that increase in development is better managed than it is today. So we've said, and we went through the list here on the minimum essential services that we wanted to provide, and that's how that budget was built. And I believe that it's an accurate budget based on the services that we said that we want to provide. Now, the voters, if you approve this and it goes to referendum, the voters will have an opportunity to determine whether or not it's worth it. If that's all you're going to do, should we vote for this? Well, we think that they will, because there's a good trade-off on what it's going to cost them and what we're going to provide, because there are some essential services here. The sheriff today commits about 15 deputies to service the Indian Land area. 2 years ago, he had a proposal to charge everybody $75, and he was going to add another 15 deputies to service that area. So at that time, that $75 was going to generate about $950,000 or so. Well, we've got $1.2 million in there. The Sheriff's Department today, and this is one of the boxes that the county is in addition to roads, they have development agreements because all of the growth in Indian Land has not come from the one-off homes that have been built. They're all in large-scale developments that are going in. A few years ago, County Council said, you build a development, you're on your own, the HOA has to maintain the roads. But what they've also done in all of these development agreements is that they have made a contractual agreement that the county will provide the same level of public safety services as we provide to the rest of the county. So we've had this discussion with the sheriff where the county council says, if you guys incorporate, we're going to pull the sheriff away from here, or we're not going to fund him to be up there. They've already obligated themselves to service that. So we've built $1.2 million in there for the sheriff. We've got $1.5 million to increase the fire services. We've got 3 volunteer fire departments. Actually, we have 2. One was in Van Wyck, which is now separate from this. But we've got $1.5 million in there. The county has agreed that they will continue to provide the fire equipment. But we do not have round-the-clock coverage with paid firefighters in either of those 2 stations. So we've got $1.5 million in there that can provide for that service. And that is truly important, especially as we get the shopping centers and a hotel coming in there, that you have somebody in the station when a fire alarm comes in at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I think I went beyond what I was supposed to on that, but I appreciate your time. And I hope I answered your question or addressed the issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other committee members have a comment or question? I have just a couple, maybe to follow up from the first meeting we had, and Ms. Price brought up the point about y'all having two county council members that maybe don't live in Indian Land, but they represent Indian Land. Is that correct?
That's not correct. We have two councilmen who do represent the area. Okay, and they
I didn't
vote,
say they live there. I said they represent the area.
they represent the area, and they
Yeah.
do live. You said they don't live there. They do live there.
They do live in Indian Land?
They do live in Indian
Okay.
Land. In each District 1 and District 7, each have a councilman. One of them's here today.
Okay.
They live there, and the issue we have is it's only 2 votes out of 7 for the county council, and even though, like that property I talked before, they recommended not approving a rezoning, the rest of the council went ahead.
Right. And with the growth y'all have in the 2020 census, y'all probably going to have a third one. Is that correct?
Probably.
Probably. That's my understanding. 'Cause you jump in the question, and I'm trying to make a comment.
Sorry.
And I've been reading the Lancaster News a lot, and I get that. And I see where the post office is going to build y'all a post office, so you're going to have a zip code in Indian Land. They hunting a building or land now to.
They're talking about it. There's been a request for.
I can tell you it's
Can
been
I-
approved. I think.
It may be, but we already have our own zip code from Fort Mills 29707.
I understand, but they say they're going to put a post office there.
Yeah.
That's what's being said. So, I asked a question last month about the business fees, and I looked in the budget. The business and franchise fees for businesses, year one was $500,000.
Yeah, based
That's
on
correct.
3%. Based on 3%.
And then it goes up, based on 3%, and then it goes up roughly $15,000 per year. In year 5, it should be about $562,000.
It's based on projected growth.
Yeah. So that a bit, get back to it. When I asked a question, I was told that we're going to follow the Fort Mill plan. So that the businesses understand, the businesses that you have, that, do they understand this increase?
My communication with most of the businesses in the area, the smaller ones are generally in favor of this incorporation effort. Some of the larger ones that we've had communications with tend to be ambivalent towards it. They just see it as a cost of doing business where they are. But the smaller local businessmen, they're generally in favor of it because they live there also, and they'd like to have things more along their lines of thought process, where they can have a local representation, where they can go and speak with somebody. So, that's where we are on that.
Okay, and there was a question about the recreation fee. You're going to have a 6% on that, which the first year is $10,000, and it's going to increase slowly to $12,625. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And what you going to do with that fee, recreation fee?
We're going to, that's part of their budget in there is the.
Y'all going to have a recreation director for
Yes,
that?
we're going to have a recreation director for that. That's correct. I mean, right now, about, a couple of hundred, bunch of 100 kids can't even get in the summer program nowadays.
Okay. And do y'all understand about the PARD grants that they allocate?
You mentioned that, I think, last.
Are y'all getting any of those PARD grants for your area now?
Not that I'm aware of.
So the two councilmen you not got are not trying to help y'all get PARD grants through?
No, I don't think we've looked at that, sir.
Okay. I'm just telling you that's an option, that the delegation and the county council work together on property that y'all own.
Okay.
Or the county owns and get PARD grants. I go to Sumter to a campground down there, and it's got a big sign paid for by the PARD grant, and it's owned by Sumter County. Does any of the other committee members have any questions or concerns? Do you have anything further you'd like to add? Briefly?
Well, no, I don't want to go there. Now, just briefly, as I said, we've worked very hard and arduously over the last 2 years and tried to put together what we think is a very, very good proposal for a town of Indian Land, and we'd like to have the honor of taking that to the citizens for a vote.
And one other comment, and Senator Henry's former solicitor said he knows a little something about the law enforcement, and I'm a retired sergeant on patrol, and I know a little something about the law enforcement on the patrol side. And if this does go forward, are y'all going to have maybe one police officer in the beginning out of that $1 million budget you're talking about that you're going to give the sheriff's office? Is that an option for y'all? I know some people start out with one and maybe try to grow to 10 officers or 20 officers. But have y'all thought about having just a local one officer shift?
No, we haven't. Quite honestly, we thought about, taking the recommendation of Sheriff Fail and building the force the way he thinks it ought to be done.
I understand. Yeah. I understand. But when you go with an officer, then you have to have a magistrate, which most times in small communities like Blacksburg, which is in Cherokee County, they have like a 4-man department, and they utilize the magistrate in that area. Pay him a little part-time. I'm just saying that's something y'all might need to look at, to have somebody there that can communicate with the sheriff. Something to think about if it moves forward.
That's an interesting idea.
And anything written in that municipality goes to that municipality and not to Lancaster County. If you sign the ticket off there, not to make it a speed trap, but just saying any fines that they write there, and if you have in court there, if it's a code violation, the fine could go to that municipality instead of going back to the county. Just something for y'all to consider in the future, since law enforcement was brought up. Senator Henry has another.
Thank you, I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. As soon as I think I'm done, I'm thinking of something else worse than Senator Matthews. He says he's got 2 questions, and we said we're there for an hour and a half. And I kind of missed this, and I know y'all talked about this in the first meeting, and it just slipped my mind, and I got reminded about it. This involves a legal issue with the Attorney General's opinion and the change in the boundaries, and the cabinet's decision. And I'm not an expert in this field. I don't propose to be, so I'm not going to try to, slug it out with another lawyer on this, at least not today. But it certainly gives me some concern that because your map includes Van Wyck, that's not really a minor change. That's a pretty significant change. It does contemplate, if there's the case, as I understand, contemplates if there's sort of a minor change and the public knows about it, then that will be okay. But I guess I'm concerned that by changing it, it seems like you're looking for a lawsuit where it would be fairly simple. Like you're just sort of inviting a lawsuit, and that's going to get expensive, and that's going to take your train off the tracks. And I don't want that, and you don't want that. And as a lawyer, I don't think you should spend money on lawyers unless you really, really have to. So, is it not more prudent to amend or submit a new application with the new boundaries? Well, we've looked at it, and we've looked at everything you got, but for that, it seems like it would be a very simple step to take to amend your boundaries, submit it, resubmit it, and, I guess we might have a few more questions, but I don't know what else we could ask. Would that not be a prudent step to take, or?
Agreed. Mr. McCusker.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a lawyer either, but I did do the cabinet's explanation. I do litigation consulting.
Be careful not practicing law without a license.
Exactly. I assure you.
Would you recognize?
That's why I open with I'm not a lawyer, but in terms of, I'm sorry, Matt McCusker. Matt McCusker speaking, who's Vice President of Public Relations for Town of Indian Land, Voters for Town of Indian Land. The response is this, essentially. Cabinets, it had nothing to do with scale of change or size of change. In fact, they don't even mention that in the entire cabinet's opinion. The cabinet's opinion goes all the way to the point of allowing 37 properties to be stricken the night before the referendum. And they said they're fine with that. They went through, and I could go through the whole thing again. They've all seen it. I don't think y'all want me to, but I went through every piece of cabinets. I had some difficulty understanding where the AG came up with that standard. The best I could tell is it went back to some 1990s AG opinions to cite as reference, but Cabinets was 2011. And Cabinets essentially said the most important thing to them is voter clarity. is the notion that people who are there was a debate over contiguity and whether or not public lands were contiguous, and the legislature had to go back and rewrite. That's why you have the entire crazy contiguity statute that's written up there. But essentially, what they were saying is that going into the referendum, there were a large group of people that were unsure whether or not they were inside or outside because this issue of contiguity. And we have no issue with that whatsoever. The fact is that everyone who's in Van Wyck right now who voted for a town knows exactly where they are. That makes no difference in terms of our instance. We only had two. There's a document I wrote. I don't know if you have it submitted, but essentially, there was only two people who signed our petition from within the Van Wyck, the current town of Van Wyck. That there was only two people, so there's no confusion there. Now, when it comes to the notion of annexing and this notion that there may be 10 square miles, again, that doesn't cause confusion because you have to take a direct and knowledgeable choice to annex out of the Indian land. So anyone who would be choosing to take their private property and annex into Van Wyck certainly wouldn't be confused about whether or not they were inside an Indian land or inside Van Wyck because they're actually taking an action to change. The court was very specific, and in fact, they were very concerned about the worry that essentially petition signatures could be invalidated by last-minute annexations, and then you literally could never get a municipality incorporated. Because essentially anyone who was opposed to it could then quickly annex in another property, change the map, and then say, you know what, look, the map has changed, so now those signatures don't count. So the reason that we haven't made adjustments is if we were to resubmit, then we would essentially be suggesting that we have changed the map, but it's not a matter of us changing the map. It's a matter of that the map has changed by third parties. And it hasn't, the notion that it's a drastic change or that, I think the standard, I don't have it in front of me, but the standard that the AG suggested was anything more than minor. That's not anywhere in cabinets. That was something the AG came up with. It really was just a matter of voter clarity. And it's impossible to argue that anyone will be unclear since you have to choose to take your property out of the Indian land.
Okay, I got you. But what would be but that still leaves, there are differences of opinion out there. That's quite clear. The Attorney General's opinion is different from what your view of cabinets is, and who knows? I mean, I'm just looking at some of it. It's gray enough that you can run around in some. I mean, the decision has got some, it's not one of those bright line, easy to tell tests. I don't believe. I think it gives you some level of discretion, which is fine. I'm not debating that. My concern is that it seems like by taking a very simple, sort of just procedural step, you can avoid this whole possibility of this mess. I mean, James Island went up there.
Well, we did submit submit an addendum that changed all the numbers for Van Wyck. Like we took Van Wyck's out of that, out of all of our numbers.
That's not really what the statute doesn't really allow that, does it? It doesn't allow an addendum. It requires you to submit doesn't it require you to submit a new application? Is that? You're changing the boundaries?
I don't know that the statute really speaks to that in terms of resubmission. It doesn't. We had extensive conversations with both the Secretary of State's office and with the Judicial Committee of what the ways to move forward were, and what we kind of came to is the notion of like saying, well, here you go. So the committee's informed on how this potential removal of Van Wyck changes things. Right. We put together a new map. Here's what the map looks like. We put together, here's the new budget with adjusted, which was very negligible. It's like 0.02% or something along those lines. We went through and we hunted down every signature that could have been in a disputed area. We went through all these different things and sort of said, here's what it looks like if Van Wyck's not, and then submitted that in, so that you were fully informed, on what the issue is, or how much it impacts.
Right. I get that I'm understanding. Of course, I was here for the last one. I offer this just, free advice. It feels like that this whole process has not been hand in hand. We're all singing Kumbaya down to the committee. It's been somewhat contentious between, the competing towns and the county is my sense. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. There's some dissension out there that, at least at this stage, doesn't appear to be on the road to getting resolved anytime soon. And when there's dissension like that, people are eager to go get lawyers and go rush to a courtroom. And I just fear that your first big contingency fund expenditure is going to be for lawyers like me to go down to the Supreme Court and be hacking this thing out. And I just wonder, and that's why I asked the question, if you want to go ahead like this, fair enough, have at it, but if it goes that way, I want you to remember me because I could have saved you $1.2 million. And so I just wonder if you might want to.
Here would be,
that's all I got to say. So.
The only response I have is that our belief is that it's up to the democratic process. We believe in democracy and voting. People of this area should be able to decide which way they want to go. If people want to go out there and file lawsuits to try to make sure that they don't have the right to vote. I mean, like we've had the ACLU is supporting us. Like we have had discussions with them, and they believe in the right to vote. Like we're going to try and go to the point of where we get essentially, the people decide. Now, if somebody wants to file lawsuits and we have to go down that route, God, I hope that's not true. I pray that's not true. But we're just hoping that democracy rules, majority rules. So. Yeah.
I completely agree with you. My only concern is if you could do something, a relatively small, cheap step that can sidestep this whole thing. That doesn't mean somebody can't file suit against you. That may happen anyway. But at least you can take this issue off the table and clean that one up if there is an issue.
Well, without going into too much, we had some discussion with the council, and there is some suggestions that going in and making active steps to change maps that have already gathered signatures could impair certain arguments down the line if that was to go in that direction. That's there. But again, let's not. No, this isn't the place to hash that out. I'm sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. Any more concerns or questions? Does the staff have anything they need to clarify?
No, sir. Each of y'all have had the opportunity to read both the AG opinion and the cabinet's opinion that's been referred to. It was referenced in the last meeting, but if there are any questions or...
Chair recognizes Ms. Price.
Let me just be up front. I support what you're trying to do, straight up. But this legal glitch, small, that you can offset right now, it concerns me a bit that we don't get that cleared away, that the citizens are not faced with, the potential citizens are not faced with someone creating a lawsuit. Pardon me? Okay. And maybe that's not in all the things that we should be looking at, but that just concerns me.
I guess sitting back and listening to the mass discussion with y'all, we have basically submitted an addendum that takes Van Wyck that's been approved as town out of our proposal, and therefore, what would you recommend that we do beyond that? Because I think that's what you're asking for us to do.
I think he's referring to the petition.
What about the petition?
The land area, since the boundaries have changed. I think what he's referring to is the petition that you received from the voters.
But to do that is very prohibitive in nature and would disenfranchise the 4,000 voters who've already put on this. You're saying a small group of 70 people, and this could happen again and again, could do this over and over again because we're trying to come together with a large community. And if this is allowed to happen, what other community of any magnitude could ever become incorporated in the state of South Carolina? If one or two people, because of the square mile, put something together, my subdivision, put it together, they would never would never be allowed to move forward. I mean, this is a blocking tactic, and in my opinion, not to say that Van Wyck deserves a credible to do their own. I agree, but if every minuscule little legal battle gets fought, then, I mean, when does it end? And it took a substantial amount of time, and these voters that we have on these signatures would like the right to vote on this.
Yeah, I mean, if you're suggesting we redo the petitions, I mean, I don't think you can do that legally. I mean, without having to go back and get everyone signed again, and then there'll be somebody else, whatever.
No, so I definitely was not stating that. I was just trying to clarify what he was referring to.
I'm still looking for what we should do that we're not doing today, I guess. That's my question.
Well, I'll just comment. And I know there's concerns from the legal community, but I would say if you're not increasing the area, it doesn't really concern me if you're making it smaller, because there might be somebody that's going to ask to annex into Van Wyck before y'all vote.
Yeah.
And the James Island or the opinion out of Charleston, and Representative Fatilli is mild and meek, but he was the mayor of probably the fastest growing area of Charleston, Mount Pleasant. So I can just tell you, some areas may not be in this map as we see it now. I'm looking at a map and y'all got the little corner highlighted for Van Wyck. Well, when we come back, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if anybody's going to annex into Van Wyck or y'all going to have somebody want to annex into Indian Land.
Right. Well, it's hard to say what's going to happen in the future.
Go either way, but I'd say when I read the information handed to me, they let people change the lines the night before the vote. So as long as you're making it smaller, I don't see the problem. But it may increase a little down the line, so I think that's a question for the voter.
I think it's an open issue because a lot of things can happen between now and a vote. And I think that, and that's why I think the Supreme Court wrote their decision the way they did, because we can expect that things will change. And if you keep on holding up until you correct it for every little change, you'll never get there. So we'd like to proceed the way we are and go forward.
Okay, the chair at this time will call Representative Sotilli.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call for the question at this time to proceed with allowing them to incorporate Indian Land.
Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Second by Ms. Price. Would the staff call a roll?
Yes. Mr. Gary? Mr. Somerville? No. Mr. Sotilli?
Aye.
Chairman Moss?
Aye.
Senator Nicholson?
Aye.
Senator Hembry?
No.
Ms. Price? It's 4-3.
The vote was 4-3 to approve Indian Land's packet application. Does anybody have any more comments? Meeting be adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for your attention and time.